What's going on, everybody? This is Walt Blackman, and I hope that you are having a good day. And welcome. Remember, Election Day is Tuesday, and every vote matters. This election is about more than candidates, it's about the future of our communities, our state, and our country. That's why it's important to stay informed, examine the issues, and most of all, ask those difficult questions and understand where each candidate stands before you cast that vote or before you cross their name on that ballot. The founding father, Samuel Adams, said, "Let each citizen remember at the moment of his offering while he does his vote." Now, we need to take that information and use it in the future. And it's important that during this election season that you learn tonight that we discuss the elections, the issues, the matters to voters, and the responsibility we all share to participate in the process. Whether you agree or disagree, your voice deserves to be heard. Join the discussion, bring your questions, and most importantly, make a plan to vote on Tuesday. So let's get started. So, everybody, I'm Walt Blackman. Welcome back. As I said last night, I was going to do this again and talk to you all about the election. Today, I had an opportunity to go out to Globe, and I spoke out there, and they are having a raffle for a firearm. And excuse the noise in the back. I got my nephew and I got my youngest son here, so please excuse the noise in the back. Um, and because this is what families do when families get together. So I had an opportunity to go down to Globe today. Honored to be able to speak out there with those good folks. They're having a raffle, and they are raffling a firearm, a handgun, and all you need to do is call the Globe Republican Party, and they will sell you a ticket. It's a raffle ticket, and I will put that information on the screen. I'll also put that information on my Twitter. I'll put it on my Facebook, and I'll also make sure that I'll continue to send that out. So they'll be doing that throughout the weekend and or the week. Also, there's a gun show in Globe. Make sure if you are in Globe, you go down there to that gun show. Number two about Globe, if you are a Republican and you want to get involved, make sure that you go out to Globe, join their Republican club out there. They usually meet in the Elks Lodge or at the Elks Lodge in Globe. Make sure you go out there, talk, and see how you can help become a PC and get involved. If you are interested in getting that information, again, please, all you need to do is come on over to my page, and I will make sure that you're able to get that. So remember, you can go on and you can excuse me, you can log on to the page, or you can call in. We're hoping that we can get the number right. I have been told that we are actually broadcasting out to YouTube, and it looks like we're broadcasting on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, and also X. So we are still trying to make sure that we're able to get folks logged in, and understand there are some stations that will not allow us to log in or have you send a message. So we just want to make sure that if you're able to do that, go ahead and do that, and ensure that you're able to be part of it. If you want to call in at 435-383 8118. That's the number right there on the screen. Call on in, join the discussion, and be part of the solution and not the process or problem. If you want to log on and be on the show right now, all you got to do is join the discussion. Click that stream link, and it will bring you right to my screen, and I'll bring you up, and we'll talk about some things, and we will be able to go forward. Remember, you are live with Walt Blackman. I am the state legislator in LD7, and I want to continue to be your legislator through the next session. So let's continue to talk about the election, and let's talk about the Constitution and why it's important for you to get in there and vote. So, real quickly, I want to show off my shirt. So last week we had a reunion. And that reunion, I think some of my Army buddies are online. That reunion was at Fort Hood, Texas. And we were able to we hadn't really talked to each other for some years. And we got together for a weekend. It was really nice. I got to see some old friends, some old battle buddies, folks that I served with, deployed with, trained with. And we were able to get together and just, it was different. It was different. And it was especially heartwarming because a lot of those guys actually all of them reached out to me after my son passed away. And it's part of the 1st Cavalry Division. So you look at the word blackjack. Now, really quickly, before I get into this, there's going to be some idiot up the street in Sholo that's going to say something, and he's going to say, "Oh, that's Black Lives Matter," or "That's this and that." That's what he's going to do, and he's going to post the crap on his Twitter. He's going to say that Walt Blackman is part of a black militia or something like that. You'll probably see that because the guy, and I'm going to say it, and I really shouldn't say it, the guy's a darn idiot. Okay, however, let me tell you about the story behind this shirt. So this is the 1st Cavalry Division crest. Blackjack is the brigade. And within that brigade, I was part of the 8th Regiment. So 1st Battalion, 8th Regiment, 1st Cavalry Division, Blackjack Brigade. So Blackjack, if you know your history, Blackjack Pershing, General Pershing, was the commanding general of the American Expeditionary Forces during World War I. Now, surprisingly, he is the first combatant commander, general officer, to lead black soldiers in the combat during the Mexican-American War. That is how he got the name, because after that war, his nickname turned to Blackjack. So Blackjack Pershing, that's the brigade that I was in. And the battalion, 1st Battalion, 8th Cavalry, Delta Company, we had a reunion this past weekend. It was great. I was in 3rd Platoon, Red Dog. I was a brand new soldier, just got out of basic training. That was my first duty station, and I was able to link up with some folks that I deployed with. I believe if I can remember, my first deployment was to Kuwait. We went to Intrinsic Action in 95, and we went there not to replace the units that just got out of Desert Storm, because I came in after Desert Storm. It was called Intrinsic Action, and all we did was basically kind of sit on the border and conducted screen line operations, and we're just sitting on the border looking on the other side in our tanks and just, scanning the horizon. And that was when they were doing the no-fly zone. I believe that's when they were doing the no-fly zone. So that was my first deployment, my first unit, first platoon. Learned a lot in that platoon and went on to do some other things in the military. 20 years later, 2016, I was fortunate enough to retire and didn't get too many injuries um, from my family, or didn't get too not from my family. Didn't get too many injuries um, that from being in the military. So yeah, I was able to do that. That was fun. Um, and let me put this on a regular chat for you all. That was fun. It was fun to do. And let me do this for you. Okay. Don't ever move things around, because when you do, you kind of screw it up. That's what I do. Okay, so the reason why I brought that up, and I brought that up also, Petra. Thanks. Good to see you. Happy Saturday. Glad you're here. The reason why I brought up my reunion, not just because the history behind it, and then just give me all a heads up of what that idiot's going to say down in Sholo. Um, the reason why I brought that up is something I want to talk to you about. What I talked about today in Globe at the Republican Party, and it's also I talked about it on my podcast. I have a podcast. You can go to Apple, Spotify. You can go to those and find that podcast. I'll bring it up here before we get out. And in my podcast, I talk a lot about the Constitution, and I talk about our responsibility to vote, our responsibility to be citizens of this country, our civic responsibility. And that responsibility, part of that is understanding and living by the Constitution. Not everybody lives by the Constitution. I got it. Okay. But first of all, you got to read the Constitution. You see a lot of folks walking around, they have the Constitution in their pocket, and they use it more for I don't know, a decoration, rather than actually reading the Constitution and understanding it and applying the methods of the Constitution to our everyday world. And I often say, you'll hear people say, well, I'm going to die for the Constitution. I'm going to die. I will die for the Constitution. Okay. Dying for the Constitution is very easy. That's more easier than anything else. You can always die for the Constitution. The challenge is actually living for the Constitution. And if you're not living for the Constitution of the United States, you need to ask yourself a question. Why am I here? Not just here on this planet. I'm talking about in your space, being an American. Why am I here? Okay. I don't want you to go out and die for the Constitution. I don't want you to do that. I want you to live by the Constitution. And if we live by the Constitution, there are a couple of things that we will have to change. Really. First of all, the Constitution is not in place to make our lives comfortable. It's designed to make it difficult. Because when the Constitution is difficult, it's supposed to be difficult to break. Let's talk about freedom of speech. A lot of folks believe in that, and I believe in freedom of speech, and I believe in being able to express yourself, just like you do with elections. You're able to express yourself. However, just because you have freedom of speech does not mean you don't have freedom of those consequences. Now, I want you to liken that to voting. Think about this Tuesday that's coming up. If you've already voted, early voting, thank you for doing that. Remember to take your ballot to the voting places if you haven't. But let's talk about voting and freedom of speech. A lot of times people will get attacked because they decide to vote for a proposition or a policy or a person that is not in line with the masses. And then they get ridiculed, they get beat up about it, they get verbally accosted. Now, first of all, I don't tell anybody who I'm voting for, but some people do. And when they do, they get accosted. So being able to vote for who you want to without being verbally attacked is part of the freedom of speech. Just because you don't like what that person or who that person is voting for does not mean that you should attack that person because of who they voted for. Now, why do I bring that up? A lot of people will not go vote. I often hear people say, uh, oh, I'm not going to vote because it doesn't make any difference because nothing's going to change anyway. And a lot of times they'll say that because they were either ridiculed, they were verbally attacked, something happened for them not to go vote. Something happened. And again, a lot of that is it's like when people get mad because they're not voting for the group. I like that. I'm gonna show this if you don't mind. I really like that comment, which is said. And Petra said the Constitution is difficult, so much in the fact that there is an entire MOS in the Army called the JAG Corps, where specialized constitutional attorneys are in place. My son is one of them. First of all, thank you for your son's service. And make sure everybody you're on here, make sure you pray, give a prayer to Petra's son, who is actually serving in the JAG Corps in the military. Now, I like that, what that statement is, because in the military, and I'm glad she brought that up. I was an attorney. I wasn't smart enough to be an attorney in the military, but in the military, the Constitution is sacred. First of all, we take an oath to the Constitution. I will protect and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I will obey the officers and the orders, or the orders of the officers appointed above me. You're raising your right hand. The important part is that I will protect and defend the Constitution. That is part of free speech. Protecting and defending the Constitution. If we take that away, and that affects how a person votes, there's no wonder people don't go out and vote. A lot of times people are not going out there to vote, not to go out there. They're not going out there because they don't want to explain to the mob how they voted. Think about that. You vote the way you want to vote, and you have to explain it. And it's like Columbo asking questions of who'd you vote for, why'd you vote for him, so on and so forth. And that's one reason. And this is stuff that I when I'm talking to people, when I'm knocking doors, and they say, well, they're not going to vote, and they explain that to me. That's the first thing. So in a way, when you are attacking someone based on what they believe or their ideology or who they voted for, and then they walk away from the table because they don't want to deal with it anymore, guess what? You have stifled that person's First Amendment to the point they won't even talk about it, or they won't even vote. Now, I was looking at some of the returns today, and if we look at the returns around the state, the Republican side, we are slow with our returns. Now, hopefully we will pick that up on Tuesday, but how much is that people are not voting? Another reason why people won't vote, because they feel, as I already said, that why? Why should I? Nothing's going to change. Because, I mean, you got to think about it too. Politicians go out and say the same thing over and over and over and over. And I'm not, saying it, I'm not part of that group because I'm obviously in office. Now, I don't make promises that I can't keep. However, whenever I go to these events, particularly during campaign season, I hear the same thing over and over and over. And then when I'm down there working with them, they do the complete opposite. And I'm looking at some of these folks. I'm saying, on the campaign trail, didn't you say you were going to do A, B, C, and D? Whoa, we can't do it right now. And, yada, yada, yada. And then when they don't do these things, they make false promises, unrealistic goals or promises to folks. We wonder why people give up and they feel hopelessness. And every year we say this is the most important election. Everybody needs to get out and vote, which makes me go back to, it is easier to die for the Constitution rather than to live for the Constitution, because when you are living for the Constitution and you are following the Constitution to the letter, there are a lot of things as a party we would not do. There's a lot of things as a country we would not do. Something as easy as debt, the deficit. We're trillions of dollars in the deficit. We owe money to our grandkids that we have not even met. Why is that? Well, first of all, we're not following the Constitution. What does that got to do with voting? What does that got to do with free speech? Well, think about it. Person doesn't go on to vote, we're voting in the wrong people because they don't want to get ridiculed. The wrong people have the wrong agenda. The wrong people will continue to put things in the budget that cause the budget to grow. The Constitution said that taxpayers are forbidden from paying to pay special interest. A lot of these special interest groups are contractors. They are getting grants and so on from the government, from different agencies. Your tax dollars go to those agencies. They go to special interests. Some of those special interests are against your interest. And guess what? We have violated the Constitution. Now, again, a lot of people say, why? What does this got to do with voting? If we get more people in office at the state level and at the federal level that understand and read the Constitution, then we would not have a lot of these issues that we are having. And I mean that. When we have folks that are going to the voting polls, and I'm not picking on anybody because it happens. It happens. People are busy. I got it. You don't want to sit down and read the Constitution. It's not like this. But when folks confuse Article 1 for the Second Amendment, and they're walking around with freedom and liberty on their shirt, but they're not registered to vote, I'm asking a question. Now, I'm not just making some of this up. I've met folks. I've knocked on doors. I talk to people all the time. Last night, I was talking about our responsibility. Our responsibility as voters. That responsibility is more than just filling out a ballot. The Constitution is not a prop. Voting is something that we should hold sacred. And why is that? Well, everyone that is a legal citizen of this country has a right to vote. That is your voice from the local level all the way up to the federal level. That is your voice. If you're not going to use your voice to vote, why on earth that millions of men and women gave their life in the service of their country, why'd they give up their life? If you are not going to go out there and vote, if you are not going to follow the Constitution, if you are not going to allow someone to have the freedom of speech that the Constitution says, why are we not going to do that? Following the Constitution also means we have to be tolerant. You can believe in your ideology. You can believe in your stance. You can believe what you believe in. But it doesn't mean that simply because someone else does not believe what we believe in, that we attack them. That's not what it's all about. Freedom of thought, freedom of speech, freedom of movement, liberty, and freedom. What that means is the other person that you don't agree with has the freedom and the liberty to voice that opinion. Now, if you want to be a jackwagon and just attack everybody who has a different opinion than you, then that's what you do. That's your freedom of speech. However, you're going to look like a jackwagon and nobody's going to want to deal with you. But sometimes we just have to sit and listen and shut our mouths. And we can learn so much. And when we go to the voting booth and we are thinking about the things that we need to vote for, the policies that not just going to help us on one side or the other side, but the policies that are going to help everybody, while keeping our ideology, by keeping our principles, by not going back against that, then guess what? Think about where we would be. We can learn to not agree with each other without tearing somebody down. Speaking of voting, you ever wonder why you get two type of people that run for office? Well, actually, yeah, you get two types of people that run for office. You get the first type that run for office because they want to serve. And there are some good people down there serving. They're serving at all levels. And there's some good supporters. And I'm not just talking at the elected local positions like mayor, city council, and all the way. I'm talking about PCs. I'm talking about folks that knock on the door. I'm talking about folks that hand out pamphlets. I'm talking about those folks that really want to serve. And you have people that are only down there to serve for popularity and notoriety. And if you don't vote for them, they beat you up. If you don't believe in a certain thing, they beat you up. So then we have a backlog of people, not a backlog, we have a shortage of people who don't go out there and serve, who don't go out there and vote, who don't go out there and give it their all. Our mouths do more harm than anything else that I have seen. Our mouths. Sometimes we just got to shut up and we just have to listen. We have another text on here. There seems to be a widespread distrust in the voting system across the country. How is the trust to be reinstilled so people feel confident that their vote matters? That's a great question. How do we regain trust in our system? Well, there's a lot of people who want one day, one vote paper ballot. There's other folks who don't want the machines. There's other folks that say that our machines are not certified, so we shouldn't use them. There's other folks that say, why is it taking a whole month to vote, as it is here in Arizona? Well, what I believe in and what I believe that we need to do is one day, one vote. Whether we use a machine or paper ballots, that should be left to the county. The county recorder's office voted on by the county board of supervisors that a measure comes forward from the people or from the actual board to use paper or machines. Remember, I was talking about reading the Constitution and understanding the Constitution. There's a place in our Constitution, or not our Constitution, there's a place in the Constitution that says it's a loophole that if a county wants to use another method of tabulating their votes when they have lost confidence in a procedure, whether it be a machine or it be paper, that with a vote that they can change that procedure. Now, we've had a lot of people that are running around. We're talking about reinstilling the trust. And I love this question, trust to be reinstilled. A lot of folks don't like the machines. So county board of supervisors can change that based on a loophole. However, in Pinal County, they did try to go that route and use that loophole, which is part of the Constitution. They can do that. However, they were threatened. They were sued by the Attorney General's office here in the state, not allowing the good folks of Pinal County to choose how they vote, to choose how they exercise their First Amendment right by following the principles of their civic duties to vote. Thus, people had a distrust in the system. All you got to do is read the Constitution. You can see that. I think it should be left up to the people how they vote, because if it's left up to the people, because it's already left up to the states on how we conduct and the manner and the way of our voting. The federal government has nothing to do with that. It's how we do it at the state level, how we do it in the counties. If we give counties more latitude to have that choice, paper ballot one day, that needs to be universal. One day needs to be universal. Paper or machine needs to be by what the people of that county want and what the county board of supervisors are prepared to vote on and move. I think that will bring some trust. That's the first thing. The second thing I'm just going to call it like it is. How do we get trust? Is that we do our due diligence. We understand the Constitution, and we understand what happens behind the voting. We can't just run around and talk about the machines or the voting is, but we can't do that. We have to be involved, like you're involved on this channel with me. We have to be involved. Great question. So again, what does that have to do with voting? Well, guess what? Everything comes back to voting. I talked about a proposition a couple of weeks ago that's going to the ballot. That proposition is ESA, the Empowerment Scholarship Accounts. There's a proposition that is on the ballot in November to put guardrails on the ESA program. Now, a lot of people were fine with that because they think that there needs to be guardrails on that program. A lot of folks think that if we put guardrails on that program, then what's going to happen is that parents are going to use, or their rights are going to be chipped away at parent choice. So let me tell you why we ended up where we're at, because a few bad apples and bad actors took advantage of a program that really helps people. That's on the ballot this year. Is it constitutional to do that? Well, it is. Because they followed the constitutional guidelines to put that on the ballot. That is on your ballot. And if we are not informed, guess what? We'll miss that. If we don't go vote, that's one vote we are going to lose to protect ESA. Now, should we hurt our public schools to protect ESA? I think that's the question that we should be asking ourselves. In rural Arizona, we need public schools because we don't have a lot of private schools or charter schools. So folks will teach their children in their home. But what happens if you don't have the opportunity or the resource or the bandwidth to do that? It's hard to teach your child at home when you can barely afford to put food on the table, so both parents have to go to work. It's hard to put your kid in a charter school when there are no charter schools in your community. So when I hear things about we need to do away with our public school system, that's the wrong answer, because that hurts rural. That's on the ballot. And let me dig the hole a little deeper. Find out what candidates are for and against ESA, where their positions are, where they stand. And if you are an ESA parent, I believe in school choice. I believe in a parental choice. And I also believe in funding our public schools. So I'm going to vote for someone or a program or proposition that protects that interest. Why? Because I've read the policy and I understand the policy. It's okay to ask somebody, what do you think about this or that person or that candidate? That's okay to do. However, if you're not doing your own research, if you're not doing that, then guess what's going to happen? We're going to get what we get. I had a drill sergeant used to say, whenever we got in trouble, when we were at Fort Knox, you get what you got and you got what you deserve. When we don't vote, when we vote for somebody because we like them as a person, but we know nothing about their policies, we get what we get and we got what we deserve. A person can have a nice attitude, a nice personality, and they suck when it comes to policy. Are you going to vote for that person just because you like them? Are you going to vote for that person because you got a brochure in the mail? Or are you not going to vote for someone if a brochure comes in the mail and it's a hit piece? I'm not voting for that person because it got a hit piece. You know nothing about the candidate. Haven't read anything. Now, as a platoon sergeant, I used to say, if the shirt fits, wear it. If it fits, wear it. When we have people that are voting based on a scorecard or an endorsement, what are we doing? What are we doing? And then we're asking ourselves, why does this keep happening over and over and over and over? It comes out all the time. Endorsements are fine. But the most important endorsement to me is you, your vote, voting for me. That's the most important endorsement. Because these other endorsements, let me tell you what they don't do. They don't put food on your table. Good policy does. They don't cut your taxes. Good policy does. They don't give you parent choice. Good policy does. An endorsement doesn't put gas in your car. Good policy does. An endorsement does not protect you from criminals on the street because we have bad policies about not paying our law enforcement what they deserve to be paid. I can give a rip about an endorsement. If I can't do my job as a lawmaker, but I get good endorsements, if I suck as a lawmaker, but I get good endorsements, what does that do for you? Oh, look at this endorsement that I got, but I only show up 30% of the time to go to work. Or I only vote for special interest. Or I don't think about what's going on in my communities. Let me tell you about voting. Now, as a Republican, I don't like taxes. I don't like big government. I don't like taxes. And I certainly don't trust the federal government to do the things that they're supposed to do. I've lost a lot of faith in the federal process. Taxes in rural Arizona. There's a bill that comes out every year at the state level, and it's called the food tax. And with that food tax, it takes away taxes on food, on groceries. Now, as a Republican, that's a good thing because we don't want to tax. But let me tell you where the political courage comes into play. In rural Arizona, we need food taxes. Now, some people are probably falling out of their chair. Oh my gosh, what are you talking about? If we don't have food tax, our roads don't get paid. Our police don't get paid. Our schools don't get the extra dollars that they need. Our fire departments don't get funded. They don't have enough engines. They don't have that. Where do you think they have to go and get the money? You. They got to get the money from somewhere. And where is that going to come from? It's going to come out of your property tax, because your property tax is going to raise. Because the county and the cities have to get the money from somewhere. Grocery prices are going to go up if we don't have a reasonable food tax. Now, down in the valley, they can afford to do that. You want to know why they can afford to do that? Because they have different revenue streams. And what are some of those revenue streams? Well, you got the Cardinals. You have the baseball team, the Diamondbacks. You have the stadiums that belong to the counties that they draw revenue from. You got the universities, ASU, Grand Canyon University. You have businesses down there that are also paying TPT, which are taxes that put in revenue into Phoenix, into Mesa, into Tempe, into Gilbert. But up here, we don't have a stadium. In Globe, we don't have the Diamondbacks playing there. In Sholo and Payson, we don't have the Cardinals playing or coming up to play. So when someone attacks a lawmaker who is a rural lawmaker for saying no on doing away with the food tax, and then a pamphlet comes out and it says this lawmaker is for taxes, people tend to believe that. And when they don't vote on a person because of that, and they vote on someone else that has said something so people feel good, I'm against taxes. I am too. But I am also against not fulfilling my responsibility and making sure that your taxes don't rise on the back end. But when good lawmakers get voted out of office because they don't fit the narrative of the mob, guess what? Who gets hurt at the end of the day? We all do. Now, I'm not saying vote for me because of that. What I am trying to instill and imply is that we have to do a better job at our civic responsibility. And I every year I keep saying this. And we got some good people to go out there and vote. We got some good people that understand the process, that read, that research, that understand what they are voting for and know the candidates, that sit down and actually talk to the candidates. My hat's off to those folks, but it's not enough. It's not enough of us. Now, let me tell you the makeup of the House and the Senate, why it's important to vote. Tuesday, we have a slim majority in the House, a slim majority in the Senate. I think the Senate has either one or two over, and we have three over in the House. We're already in a split government. We have a Democrat governor, Democrat Secretary of State, a Democrat Attorney General. We have a House and a Senate that's very close. If we don't get out there and vote, you don't have to worry about a split government anymore, because it's going to be one way. We will have a Democrat House, a Democrat Senator or Senate, a Democrat executive, not to mention the two Democrat senators that we have, U.S. senators. Now, whatever side of the aisle you're on, you're on that side. Now, notice, I'm going to pull that up right now. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Now, notice, when I said those things, I didn't badmouth anybody. I talked about policy and fact. I exercised my First Amendment, explaining why it's important to vote in our election in Arizona. Having that conversation with someone else, that and having the conversation about the taxes, I've been attacked so much, and some of my peers have been attacked so much, where some folks have just walked away from politics. Because some folks don't want to listen. Okay, so AZDCOS, thanks for coming up. When the disinformation task force exists, it is brought up on political ads, flyers, propaganda to them, and asked if they would address that issue. So the answer was no. They were focusing on protecting judges. Now, I've seen that, and that's happening here in the state. That's happening at our level, and a lot of it is happening in the DCS realm. Now, a lot of folks don't know that judges are on our ballots. Every once in a while, the judges are on the ballots. Don't you think it's important to be able to know who those judges are and what they are doing in our state? Don't you think that's pretty important, because the judges actually control the judicial branch, which is the third part of what? The government. It's important to understand that some of those folks that are on those ballots that are judges are the ones that are going to be making decisions about our lives when we're talking judiciary. That's why it's important to get out there and vote, folks. That's why it's important. In my podcast, I talk about the Constitution and voting more in depth. And in it, there's a part, I forget what episode it is. I'm talking about the first two first three elections. So I don't want to insult anyone's intelligence. However, we should know the first president was Washington, Adams, and then Jefferson. Washington made a pretty interesting statement when he was actually leaving office. He said we shouldn't have political parties, because when we have political parties, the liberties in the republic start to erode, because people will vote based on their party rather than the republic, the liberties that protect us, and the Constitution that covers us. Now think about that. So when we put a lawmaker in, or we put a judge in, that there is false advertisement, there is disinformation because of pamphlets and this or that, and they are only voting for that particular ideology, does that help you? Is it going to benefit you or your family? Those are the things we need to be thinking about. Now, typically people vote with their pocketbook. When I go to the gas pump and I'm putting more dollars in my gas tank, I am voting because of that. What lawmaker at the federal level is trying to fight against that? And I'm not just talking about Arizona, I'm talking about anywhere we go. What lawmaker is pushing back against that? I can do slogans all day long. But at the end of the day, why is it going to cost me $140 to fill my tank up rather than the $100 that it usually does? I can say that I'm going to fight for you. You're going to fight for those grocery prices that are skyrocketing? Are you going to do that, or are we just going to hear more of the same? So that's why when I do these shows, or I go talk to groups, a lot of folks, I talk across the state, and my message is the same. How are you going to vote? Are you going to vote on an ideology, or are you going to vote on good policy that provides you liberty and freedom under the Constitution? How are you going to do this? Again, I can give, we got slogans all over the place, but a slogan is not going to get you health care. It isn't. A slogan is not going to protect your retirement. A slogan is not going to put food or clothes on your kids' back and in their belly. And for damn sure, a mailer is not going to do those things. A mailer is going to give you misinformation, whether it's a good mailer or a bad mailer. It depends on what side of the knife it's on. Now, I know there's probably some candidates out there that their heads are exploding. However, I really don't care. Because when I go down there to do my job, or I go to vote, as I will on Tuesday, I'm damn sure I know who I'm voting for. Now, thank goodness, the folks that I vote for in the primary, some of them have my ideology, but not all of them. Some of the folks that I see on the ballot have no business on the ballot, but they have a right to run. But when we go to the ballot and we see these folks on the ballot, knowing that they have a right to run, which is it's part of liberty, it's part of freedom, are we voting for that person simply because they are the loudest in the room? I don't think we should do that. But that's my thing. Okay, everybody has what they need to do. Let me look at some of these deals again. Let's see. So, AZDCS Oversight Group, you get a choice to retain or not to retain judges on your ballot. We say do not retain. And it's as easy as that. But I guarantee you, and I know this young lady, because she does her homework. I guarantee you, when she goes to vote on these judges, she knows exactly who not to retain and who to retain. She did her homework. We got to do that with all of them. That's great information. Historical data has shown Republicans generally don't get out and vote in local elections and in midterms. How can that be rectified? It seems that many Americans don't realize the local elections have power. That's an awesome statement. And let me tell you why that's an awesome statement. Because government works, hey, Pam, government works best at the lowest level. The federal government, okay, so those elections are important as well. But when is the last time the federal government's gotten it right? Think about it. Let me ask you this. If somebody came to you and said, here's a bill. Well, how much is the bill? It's about 200 grand. Well, what do you mean I got a bill for 200 grand? Well, yeah. Well, so we really didn't do our job in balancing the budget. We overspent. We used special interests. We went against the Constitution. And here's your bill for $200,000. And by the way, your kids have the same bill, and your neighbors and the folks up the street. Who can better protect you on that? Local government. Because at local government, particularly at the state, we have no choice but to balance the budget. We don't get to hide out in the lobby when it's time to vote on the budget. Because by law, we got to sit in front of that or behind that little box with the red and the green and vote yes or no. We have to balance the budget every single year. We can't kick the can down the road, because when we kick the can down the road, gas prices go up with other things that go on in our country and in the world. Food prices go up. A lot of the people in the federal government have lost focus. And I'm not saying everybody, because there are a lot of hardworking people up there. We have some Republican congressmen in our district, and CD2, Eli Crane, Congressman Biggs, Gosar. We have Siscomani. It's down there somewhere in the Phoenix area. And believe it or not, folks, they get kicked in the teeth as well. But does that mean I have faith in the federal government and what they're doing up there? No, I do not. When we don't vote in midterms because we're only concerned about the presidential race, guess what we do? We set ourselves up to where we're scrambling in the presidential elections because we didn't vote to protect our local rights in the midterms. True. Come on. When you go to the store tomorrow, you go to Walmart, you go to get, you just wherever you go, a lot of the things you do are regulated by state statutes. They are. Now there's some tentacles and there's some peeling back the onion on some of that. Well, Walt, you just said our food prices and gas prices are up. We don't have control of that. Now we can do some referendums to slow the increase of prices. However, we got to get the money from somewhere. K through 12, making sure that we are voting on the right people for superintendent of public instruction. I think Mr. Tom Horn is he's the person in there now. And the treasurer, Kimberly Yee, is running against Tom Horn in the primary. That's a position that most people don't really look at. They vote on the name that's familiar with them. Now, both of these two individuals are public servants. They work hard. They want to do right by the state. But are they going to be able to do the job that we need them to do based on what I told you about ESA, parent choice, public schools? Or are they out there talking about things that really don't matter? I got to tell you this. When I get somebody that comes in my face and all they're talking about is DEI, but they're not going to tell me how to better give me the tools to educate my child to protect my ESA, to protect my right as a parent, I start scratching my head and wondering, okay, so what else is going to come out of your mouth? What is your plan to do these things? What is your plan to protect ESA? Because the legislature, we have to do our deal. We have to do our part. But how are you going to implement that? So I want to hear more than just a damn slogan. I don't know about you. I want to see more than just a pamphlet that shows up at my door. You know what I do with those pamphlets when they show up at my door? Now, this is just me. The mailers. I go to my mailbox, I'm looking at my mail, and it takes me from my mailbox to the door to be able to see that. And if I don't see it, I'll rip it up and throw it away. Now, personally, I don't do mailers. EIs, IEs, independent expenditures will do, they do these things. And I'm grateful. However, I don't have the money to pay to do mailers because I don't raise a lot of money. But think about that. Would you rather have your candidate spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, or I don't know how much people spend on mailers, for something that comes in the mail and it is destroyed because you don't want it by the time you get to your door from the mailbox? Think about that. Is that the priority of that person running for office? And a lot of times these mailers that come out are hit pieces. They're hit pieces. A lot of times candidates don't even know each other. A lot of times they haven't even met. They haven't even talked to each other. And they're writing all kind of stuff about him. It's, pretty soon somebody's going to write that Walt Blackman was the third shooter on the grassy knoll. I'm waiting on that one to come out. Okay, let me look at this one right here. So we got it's what some taxes are used for. That's an issue for me. So again, I like that statement. What are our taxes being used for? When we go to vote, let's talk about property taxes, and we're voting for county boards of supervisors. Did you know that county boards of supervisors can raise your taxes up to 3% without going through you? Did you know that? Now, that usually doesn't happen, but did you know that? And if we don't know that, why don't we know that? And do we want to get caught with our pants down when our property taxes get raised because we voted for somebody in office because we based that decision on a negative ad hit piece, or because we personally don't like that person? And it could be that same person who is stopping that 3% from being raised without your consent. But if you didn't know that, how are you going to know that this person doesn't have an agenda to be able to do that? Well, how about your mayors? How about your school board? How about your superintendents of your school boards? Now, in our area, we've got some good ones. We have some good ones. We have some good teachers. So when we talk about voting for propositions or voting for people to go into office, I want to know, how are they going to take care of those teachers so we can keep them? I can give a damn what they send me in the mail. I want to ask questions. What are you going to do to keep good teachers? Well, I sent my mail. I don't care about that mailer. What are you going to do? And are we asking tough questions of our candidates? That's why I like doing this. Are we asking tough questions, or are we just asking the everyday questions that we ask? Is that happening? Because I fell into that before I started getting into this. And I'm not saying it's your fault. I am definitely not saying that. The reason why I am doing this is to number one, is to bring awareness to this whole thing. This is serious. Midterms are serious. Who you vote for is serious. You can vote for somebody who has 100% on a I'm not going to say their name because I don't want to, give them out. But say a person has 100%, 100%, 100%, 100% on their scorecard, and you vote for them based on that, but you do not know, especially if it's an incumbent, that that scorecard is only reflected of a few votes. This past session, we had 1,200 votes that we took. 1,200. And folks walked out of there with 100 being graded on maybe 10 of those votes, maybe 10 of the pieces of legislation. And it's the legislation that fits the narrative and the ideology of the public or the special interest group. That's the real of it. That's the real of it. Unless it's the police associations, the fire association, and some of these public service associations that go out and they score you, that's real. But some, animal rights, those things like that, those are real things. Those are tangible things. But if you're doing your job, you shouldn't need that. Now, I've seen lawmakers that vote based on a score. And then they get reelected. And then they go on there and do exactly what they're not supposed to do because we put them in there. And we're wondering why we are so pissed off. Because our lawmaker, they're not doing what they said they were going to do, but they sure did get 100. But I bet you didn't know what I just told you about the amount of votes that they were being graded on. Now, I just had an assessment done on myself, and I'll put it on my webpage. Every single vote that I took was assessed. Every single vote, 1,200 votes, not 5, not 10, not special interest groups votes. Every single vote to see where I was. And guess who did that? Guess where they got the information from? The clerk's office in the House of Representatives, where the votes are counted, where the votes are logged. So if you really want to know your candidate's vote, you're doing your homework, you're doing your due diligence before you go vote. Ask them, how did they come up with that number that they are showing you in front of a crowd that they got 100, but they only counted 5 to 10 votes when we had over 1,200 votes and pieces of legislation? Is that person really being transparent with where their policies lie? I had a group that came into our committee, and let me do some of these questions. I had a group that came into our committee that had no interest in rural Arizona except to take from the table. And when I say take from the table, think of yourself at a buffet. And at a buffet, there's a lot of food on the buffet. However, it's a special buffet. And this buffet, everybody has to pay. Whether you eat or not, you have to pay. So the bigger groups that have more representatives or more people at the buffet, they're all in front of you. And they are getting their food. And they are not allowing you to stick your plate in there and get food. But they have more of a voice. So you're in there trying to get scraps, which are literally resources, roads, school, infrastructure, internet infrastructure, jobs, revenue growth. You're at the buffet trying to get a seat at the table, but you got a whole group over there that's already taken the food, but you've paid for it. A lot of policy and a lot of these scorecards that come out and we're voting on scorecards, or we're voting based on a mailer, are coming from these same groups that won't allow us to eat at the buffet. They will not let us have a seat at the table unless we force our way at the table. Now, I'm not saying they're all bad. I'm talking the general policy of it. Why do you think we don't have big industry up here? Why do you think our mills have closed? Why do you think we're having problems with some of our forestry? Now, I had a group that came into our committee, a rural development committee, that had no interest in northern Arizona or rural Arizona, special interest group, conservative group, but they were against helping rural Arizona. Against. Why? Well, because they thought they could do it. And then when you have lawmakers that really stand up for rural, or they stand up for the principles and what's right, here comes a mailer. This person is not a conservative. This person is this or that or that. And then we take that and we go vote. And then we wonder why the great state of Maricopa is taking away our seat at the table. Did you know a lot of those ads come from special interest groups in the Valley? Did you know that? Did you know when they put somebody on those ballots or on those mailers, and it's an IE, okay, and I'm not just talking in our community, that we're having someone choose who's running in our districts. Now, I've been in office since 2020 with a 2-year break, 3-year break. So folks know me. I live in the district. I shop at the Walmart. I go to church up the street. My kids go to the high school or went to the high school. I go to the football games, the basketball games. We have the neighbors that come over and visit us. Pam Tinney brought us food the other night. They know me. But when we have folks, and I'm not talking about the candidates who are running in LD7 now, I'm talking about that. But when someone just shows up on our ballot out of nowhere, and folks are saying, well, who is this? Do you know that's someone that was put into a race, particularly rural races, that has the interest tied to them from groups in Maricopa? Because if they can get that person on the ballot and elected, guess what? That's another seat at the table we don't have. And if all that comes out are mailers that said this basically says this person walks on water, and anybody else who is running, they basically ride around with Satan, and we vote on that person that the great state of Maricopa put on our ballot, that chose our candidate and put a lot of money behind that person, guess what? We get what we got, and we got what we get. That's why it's important to vote. That's why it's important to vote in the midterms. Now, before I close out, the Constitution. The Constitution gives us the God-given right to vote, as long as we are legal and we are citizens. I am really getting tired of folks thinking that a person that is not a legal citizen of this country, of this state, has the same right as you, a citizen, to vote. I don't think that that's right at all. And there's a couple of reasons why. I'm not saying they're bad people. I'm not saying that at all. But the Constitution applies to citizens of the United States. The German Constitution doesn't apply to me. I lived in Germany. I couldn't vote in Germany. My dad still lives in Germany. He can't vote in Germany. He can vote in the States. He can vote in Ohio. We are the only country that pretty much does that. And now the part that I am getting tired of is when folks get mad when folks are exercising our liberties and our freedoms and following the Constitution, say, hey, you're not a citizen. We want you to be a citizen. We want you to assimilate to the great melting pot. But assimilating is one thing, but trying to push people in our voting pool that are not citizens is wrong. It's just wrong to do. It's wrong as a $2 quarter. And we shouldn't say, well, you don't want folks that are not citizens to vote, so therefore you must be racist. I'm like, what? Well, first of all, I know you're not talking to me. But why would that make someone be put in that category? Because that same person could not go to Canada and vote. That same person could not go to France or Italy, Greece, Spain. They couldn't go there and just walk in the country, not be a citizen, and vote for their prime minister or their president. They could not do that. Why? Because other countries have strict voting laws. I know this for a fact because guess what? I was in Germany. Question came up is, how do we get people to trust our elections? That's the first place we need to start. And we need to have tough skin when we say, if you are a citizen, then you can vote without people getting called out. Remember I was talking about that? Getting called out because they say you should be a citizen in order to vote. Now with the feds, we got that different problem that you can vote if you are not a citizen. You can vote in a presidential election. You can do that. I don't agree with that. And I also don't agree with it because men and women have died to give Americans the right to vote. Civil Rights Act, voting rights. A lot of folks think that that was just for black folks, the voting rights. It was not. It was to ensure that everyone that fell under the Constitution, that had the cover of the Constitution, had a constitutional right to vote. It had nothing to do with the color. Now, the 14th Amendment did when we're talking about citizenship, children of freed slaves, and then thus they had the right to vote when it came time when that happened. The Civil Rights Voting Act. It just was not applied to black folks. It was applied to Americans who at one time did not have the right to vote. The Constitution, the amendment, provided them the protections and the right to vote. Because why? They were citizens of this country. So guess what? If that applies to us, the right to vote, shouldn't we take advantage of that and vote? Now, if you're not going to go vote because you think it doesn't do anything, before I close, how about you vote for that person who fell on the battlefield? If you don't care for anything else, you don't think it's going to help you, you don't think it's going to do anything, how about you vote for that person, that woman, or that man who fell on the battlefield and gave their life to give you the freedom and the liberty to go down the street and cast your vote or get it in the mail and fill it out and send it back? How about we do it for them? How about we earn that right to vote? So, mailers are a joke and they're an insult to hardworking people that donate to candidates. That is absolutely right. That is absolutely right. It's what's that? They used to have a paper. I don't even the Esquire. Is it called the Esquire? The Esquire. All kind of stuff comes in the mail. That's what that reminds me of. Okay. Special interest groups, even the group homes, get big perks for donation. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Big Pharma does too. They do. If you look at my voting record, you look at my voting profile, I have a myriad of policies that I vote for. You won't see me just voting in one area. You won't see that. If you take a look at some of these folks' profile, you go to www.azledge.gov, you go into their profile, and they are just focused on their legislation in one area. That may be a question that you want to ask about special interest. The Constitution gives us a right to stand up for yourself against bad actors, the liberties to stand for what is right, good, and beautiful, and the confidence to do it with all your might. Again, are you strong enough to live for the Constitution? Because it's easy to die for. Now, when I say live for the Constitution, you have to live for the Constitution. You may not agree, like I don't agree with a lot of stuff that goes on, but as an American, Americans have a constitutional right for protection, due process, freedom of speech, the right to assemble, the right to free press. Yeah. I may not like what somebody has to say. There's a guy up the street that talks so bad about me, his tongue's going to fall out of his mouth one of these days. But I get free rent in his head. Now, somebody said, well, aren't you going to, guess what? I don't like the guy any more than he likes me, but he has a constitutional right to say what he wants to say as long as it's not slander. I think he's gone beyond that, but that's what I'm talking about. That's what I went to war to defend. A person's right to vote, a person's right to say what they feel. I may not like it. It may suck, but that is their right, their constitutional right. And what right do I have if the person is following that constitutional right and just not making things up out of, saying it's fact, but it's not? What right do I have? And we see those rights slowly eroding because folks aren't getting out and voting in the midterms, and we are voting for the wrong people. And for me to sit up here and tell you that a person even who talks so bad about me has their constitutional right to vote, some people might say, wait, dude, did you fall and hit your head? I did not. I, Walt Blackman, swear to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will obey the orders of the officers appointed above me. So help me God. The Constitution of the United States. Representative Gillette is not running. Yes, Representative Gillette is a retired command sergeant major. He served on my committee with me. He is a good man. So everybody, it's time for me to get out of here. Thank you so much for the compliment. I do appreciate you. Guess what? I said I was going to be here today or yesterday, today, and I will be here again tomorrow. We're going to be talking about something else. I want to make sure we're going to just kind of briefly have the ballot. We're going to just, you know what I'm going to do? We're going to do, look at the ballots, just, briefly look at the propositions, but I'm going to see if I can't find one of those. Hey, thank you so much. I'm going to see if I can't find one of those mailers. Maybe I'm going to see if I can find an old one that somebody sent about me. I think those, if I hadn't thrown it away, I'm going to do that. Thank you for reaching out to my family again in our time of loss. A lot of folks know we lost our friend. We appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate you for showing that love and support again. Pam Tinney, our honorary grandmother, mom, helper, slap them upside the head person, because she slaps me upside the head. I got to tell you, Pam, you are a jewel that cannot ever be replaced. There's no dollar amount that could replace the things that you do. You are that quiet warrior that just, you do it. And especially my friend that is fighting for DCS in the oversight group. Tomorrow's going to be at 7:30 to 8:30. Again, I ask you to share this live. Share it. And let's talk about saving our republic, but saving it in a way where we don't have to chop off somebody's head to make sure that they hear our point, because that's not why we are up here, and that's not the right thing to do. And plus, it's not real Christ-like. Okay, everybody, have a great and wonderful Saturday. Be safe. Have fun. If you see me around, please stop and say, hey, what's up, man? What's up, black man? Hopefully you don't have to explain that to somebody who doesn't know me. Okay, everybody, take care. God bless. And we'll see you tomorrow, 7:30 to 8:30 on the Walt Blackman Show. Take care, everybody.